Good evening. How you doing tonight? You made it out through the storm and the wind and the rain. Always good to hear poets, always good to hear musicians, and always good to hear from visual artists. You're standing in the oldest metal arts gallery combined with a production studio in the United States. My father originated this kind of combination back in 1948. We're also celebrating 19 years of First Fridays as of the new year in North Beach. Continuous. So anyway, I'm Dan Macchiarini, Macchiarini Creative Design. I'm the second generation of 3 generations of metal artists. I'm lucky enough to work with my daughter. We have a school here, Metalworks SF, and you're all welcome to take a card, go up online and check out what we teach. We're starting our winter session next week, and people will be able to sign up for the spring session soon. We do individually handcrafted work here, all custom work. And speaking of which, I have my very dear friend here, Marylyn Tesconi, who's an amazing quilt artist. So we decided that we wanted to have more artwork to fill our walls. So we've had photographers and painters, and we've had all kinds of people here who were amazing artists in the neighborhood. We give the walls away. We don't sell them. We want to promote, particularly people who don't get promoted usually, because there's a lot of work out there that's not recognized, and we want to recognize it. And Marylyn's work is particularly important. She'll explain why and how it's connected to her social values. So I want to introduce Marylyn Tesconi.
Hi, everybody. So I'm maybe a little over-prepared for this tonight because I really didn't know what I was supposed to exactly do. So I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of what I was going to talk about by telling you that my own history with the needle and thread, which started when I was a little girl. I come from an Italian family, and they were huge accordion enthusiasts. They had the most marvelous accordions that had mother of pearl and rhinestones, their names in the front of their accordions. And they were quite serious about it, and I was supposed to carry on that tradition, as all nice Italian girls were supposed to do back in the day. So they sent me to accordion lessons, and after 3 really painful lessons, my teacher bopped me over the head with a music book, and he said, "You have no talent for this. And this is the end of our lessons." So I was quite dejected and unhappy. But I had to go home and I had to break the news to my family. And when I did that, my grandmother came immediately to me holding a needle and thread. And she said, "Here, take these. Let's try this." And so I did. She and I never made any quilts together, but she taught me how to be brave about sewing, how to try to make things that I had never tried before. And she gave me a lot of courage. So one day, while I was perusing a flea market, I found a book. I brought it. This is a Sunset book called Quilting and Patchwork. These Sunset people used to make books about everything, how to mow the lawn, how to cook, how to do whatever. And this one happened to be how to make a patchwork quilt. So for 25 cents, I bought it, and I taught myself how to make quilts. Over the years, I've made a lot of different quilts for a lot of different reasons and occasions and people. One of my favorite quilts to make is t-shirt quilts because they're so iconic, and everybody has a bunch of t-shirts stuffed in a drawer somewhere. And my favorite t-shirt quilt that I ever made had to do with Dan Macchiarini, who was married to a person who was a member of the clown community. Her clown name was Queenie Moon, and Queenie passed. And Dan asked me to come over and help him clear out her closet. So I did. And when we opened up the closet, there was t-shirts in there, but there were also her clown costumes and accessories. And so I took all of the costumes and all the shirts and all the everything, and I brought them home, and I created a quilt for Dan. And Dan has that quilt hanging in his bedroom to this day. I'm sure that he is comforted by it, and it also has memorialized Joan, Queenie. So I've also recognized that art, well, quilt art, quilt making, is a form of activism. And I have worked on the AIDS quilt. I created a peace quilt for the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. I contributed to a breast cancer awareness community quilt. I created a quilt for a gun buyback where the people would bring their guns and the police would give them some money and I'd give them a quilt. I'm sure they gave it to their grandmother or whatever, but it was still the idea that there's space and room for art everywhere. And well, I've also created during the pandemic a mask quilt that had removable masks. So it became sort of a living piece of art as people would take a mask and I'd replace it with a new mask that I also had made. At this time, I've been doing a lot of work in the restorative justice community. And there's a quilt on the wall there. It's a blue one with the little pants and t-shirts, yeah. That quilt was inspired by my visits to the prison. The things I noticed in the prison right away were the barbed wire, and also that the men had the word prisoner on their shirts. And I just thought, how would I feel if I had the word victim on my shirt and I had to walk around with that every day? And so I decided to make a quilt about the upside-down justice system and about new words, like how about prisoner of hope? Why don't we try that on for size? So that's where that came from. The last thing I guess I'll say, I don't want to take up too much time, but about my process of making these quilts, it's pretty simple, actually. I'm often influenced to start a quilt by color. I'll see something maybe in nature, or I'll see a color somewhere, and it will make me want to use that color in a piece. If not color, sometimes it's a circumstance or an event that inspires me. And I will go and pull out from my considerable stash, since I've been making quilts for 40 years. I have a lot of fabric, so there's almost no color I haven't got covered. I'll go in and pull the fabrics out, and I'll lay them on the floor of my workroom. And I'll just look at them. Maybe I'll move them around a little bit. Maybe I'll do this for a couple of days. often I will invite my 7-year-old granddaughter to come and consult, which she did help me with that middle quilt there. That was her idea. So once I've decided what colors I'm going to use, I'll pull those out. I'll cut the shapes that I want. Sometimes I'll use a traditional pattern, and sometimes I will make up a pattern. I go with my gut on how I feel about it. And then I'll start cutting out the pieces, which I then place on the floor again for placement, and another couple of days will go by. And I will sew the pieces of the quilt together on a machine, on a sewing machine. And I do that because I want the stitches to be really strong and taut, and that's the strongest, tautest stitches that I can make. But when I put the quilt together, every quilt is made of 3 layers. There's a backing, a batting, and the top. So here's a quilt. Here's a piece of a quilt. And it's the backing, the batting, and the top. When I'm ready to put the 3 layers together and do the finishing stitchery on the quilt, I take the quilt, I take an embroidery hoop, usually bigger than this, but not huge, and I put this in here, and then I stitch. I do all of my stitch work by hand. It takes a really long time to do that, but it creates a beautiful look, and it is so soothing, really, to work in that way. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. What I hope about my work is that people will see it and they will look at color and design in a new and interesting way. And I also hope that if it's a quilt that's making a statement about something, I hope that people will be able to look through a different lens than they have previously seen through. And that's it. So wrapping it up, I'll just say that quilting is my passion, and it has been for a very long time. It's my therapy in a lot of ways, and it is also my gentle attempt at influencing joy and change. So I appreciate you listening to me tonight and looking at these pieces that I brought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marylyn, for telling us about your beautiful quilts on the walls here. I'm Jessica Loos. Welcome to Macchiarini Creative Design and to North Beach First Fridays Poetry Series. Thank you to my friend Colin back there in the doorway, who has been videotaping these readings for Alcatraz Radio. Anyway, we have some nice poetry, some good poetry coming up this evening, and some good music by Stephen at the end. I'm going to start out with 2 poems. This poem is from the anthology Beat Not Beat. It's by a poet named Tony Scabella, who used to live in LA. Spring swing, rain wet, fresh born, the crop seeded, and bright green things shoot for the sun. Light winks on us. I am weak too, new, colt-like skinny legs, wobble bones in the air, tremble to support my own weight. Chesty heartbeat, new word world, springtime, sat tidy night, fiddle stringed life notes, the wired fingers, box blowing. We seek to speak to all green thumbs who look to the sun and feel the rain in the face, moon juice, partial to poets, the lady's tears. And This next poem is a poem of mine. It's called The Alphabet Museum, and it's from my friend and teacher and the poet David Meltzer. And there's a poet later on who's also reading his poem about David Meltzer, so I thought I would mine too. The Alphabet Museum for David Meltzer. That place you dig, where one finds words, letters on letters, bold consonants, secret vowels, A-E-I-O. You swung from Brady Bunch to bebop, Delchinsky to Stravinsky, Lester No Eyes to hip-hop, Boom Boom Room to Judy Blume, Two-Way Mirror Clearer, and all the way back, be-do-bop, be-do-bop. Beat-a-bop, 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 beat-a-boop. Gave you a Valentine in your box next to mine, alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, E, F, lama moop, lama moop. Every time I see you, it said, I want to give you a bath. Ooh-la, ooh-la, suds. We made out in specks, wine glasses of letters on letters. The Alphabet Museum, that place you dig. I want a bath. Beat a boop. The next poet I would like to welcome up is Steve Meloan.
Well, thanks to Jessica and Dan for bringing us all together on this rainy night. I'm going to read a couple of pieces from an upcoming collection. This first one is called Awakening. I once worked with a guy who wanted to be a songwriter. He knew I'd done some recording, had even been on the radio. He said he needed more classes in lyric structure, in composition, in theory. I thought, no, you need to wander the destroyed city streets, see the suffering, the beauty, the immeasurable madness of it all. Have your heart torn out, tossed to the wolves, and then watch it devoured in your final moment. There will be your song. The theory, the composition, the structure will matter little then, but you will have found something beyond measure. Let your seared soul sing to the cosmos. The gods will delight in the beauty of your song, of your awakening. And then this next one is called The Last Time. They say there's a first time for everything, but it's really the last times that matter. Your last kiss, your last sunset, your last time making love. All of them gathering, conspiring, unnoticed, unremarkable, until their true meaning emerges. And then at the final moment, when some longed for truth comes rushing in, the last breath, the last of the last, passes out into the world, like a friend who stayed too long. And then this is one with a bit of a political bent. It's called Homecoming. A homecoming, returning from whence you came, a mother's Midwestern town, a war hero memorial, 5 states in 3 days at 90 mph, mile after mile, past cornfields, metal grain silos, glistening in white-hot heartland sun. It was the land of Superman, of the decent people, simple clapboard houses, always set back, nowhere to stop along the way. The message clear, if you're not from here, keep moving, no solicitors, no strangers. A tribute to the war hero relative, his World War II plane wreckage discovered after so many decades, moldering in a German forest. Mile-long rows of American flags, Harley riding, rolling thunder, veteran escort, 21-gun salute. And then at night, back at the hotel, the Republican convention, there on the room's flat screen. By day, honoring the heroic conquering of authoritarianism, and at night, celebrating its return. Red, white, and blue conventioners, symbolic assassination attempt bandages taped to ears, and scary believer eyes. He is risen, one said. Some things have changed in the heartland, glittering Harrah's casino hotel, even a downtown pot dispensary. But some things have not. Over dinner with your people, you talking too loud and for too long, over the family patriarch saying grace, head silently bowed, all except yours. It's all right, an older woman pats your arm. What can be expected? Someone from California. Then the next day, finding the boarded up stone facade of the old family general store and the home itself, abandoned, overgrown, roof caved in at one side. But there, the front porch where Grandma once swung you and your brother. A wood slat swing, symbol of a simpler time, the three of you singing off-key, home on the range. And then dawn at the banks of the Kentucky River, train cars rattling past over ancient metal trestle, the same one your mother delighted in as a young girl. A bird glides close along the teeming muddy waters, just you and your ghosts and a distant gathering storm. And then this one is kind of a love letter to San Francisco. It's called Home. It was a rainy night in San Francisco. I just moved from LA, was still finding my way in a new life. I was tired, returning from work, there in the winter's dark. A few blocks from home, it began coming down hard, and I needed to turn left at a four-way stop. Like a vision between sweeps of wiper blades, I saw a couple sitting on a couch in the middle of the intersection, an end table beside them, and a lamp that was lit. They were reading magazines in the rain. I slowly edged around them, my turn signal lighting their faces. I stopped, rolled down the window. They looked up from their magazines as if I had interrupted a quiet evening. "Is this performance art?" I asked. "Uh-huh," said the girl. Then she got back to her magazine. I knew in that moment that I was home.
Very good.
And then I had a book out last year that was a combination of song lyrics of mine and flash fiction by my brother. And I'm going to read a little sort of song poem. It's called Burnt Toast. It was an afternoon of shadows, of trying on new lives, of gazes firmly held and reflections there in knives, of Benedict brunches and stories softly told, of chiming silverware and eyes a bit too bold. You ordered up burnt toast, just like your mother made. Try it, you might like it, maybe with some marmalade. You said it was so much like life, bitter but strangely sweet, and that it all made sense somehow, the fact that we would meet. Lives only imagined and lives newly tried on, like dresses draped on chairs at the coming of the dawn. And all of it so effortless, like sidewalk clothes you touched, maybe meaning nothing and then somehow all so much. But you were running out of time, you said, and had someone to meet. You took my hand, stared into my eyes, then disappeared on down the street. And then this last one is a little timely piece. It's called Support the Arts. Stalin wanted to be a poet. Hitler wanted to be a painter. Mussolini wanted to be a novelist. And look at what happened. All the more reason to support the arts. Thanks a lot.
Once again, Steven Meloan. And next, please welcome Yates Cessna.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Dan. I have a performance in 2 pieces. Without cruelty, It's sort of an abysmal feeling, as though walking down the street with the convinced mind that all passerby are there in mutual recognition. Yes, I have seen you before, though I know not where you're going now. I am by the dockyards the great ships are wheeled in, their propulsions, ferry, repletion, attention, opportunity, chance. Each step is made in praise or anger over dulling cays and mutilations. They are constructing a mill house. Its anatomy is propped on floating islands. When I am writing to you the letters, they disappear as though falling into sinkholes. One opened up on the street corner the other day, and I saw shipwrecked a pushcart. The paletas had melted into a little lake. The lake was made of red snow. Sort of like this morning. In each other's arms, it looks like it's snowing the way it does in a fishbowl or in a grotto. Disfigured arcs that fall to an emotionless pavement. We stay in a room around the corner from recitations of dreams. To go outside, I become made of ice. It has happened already. It has already happened. I suppose it's a dispatch of sorts, what I'm giving to you. I don't have much else to give. I start to run out of pictures. If you are held by the same dream, if the same dream occurs across a significant part of time, if the time in one's life that is marked by the dream changes, but the dream remains the same, does there exist a finitude of images? The soldiers consigned to a leisure's war in pursuit of new ones, haunted by primal images, we can only tell one another twin marches of stories and twin marches of songs. Now in our resurrection of the eternal city, I couldn't say how here we arrived. We arrived here in my darkest hour. I or you cry to another on one of the piers. It becomes hard to distinguish call and response. It becomes a room of watching or waiting in capture of dead-end pleasures. We are in different times now. Yes, those days have passed. Through the streets there are runners. I am invited to go to a shooting range. I've lost such an ability. What was once south now becomes eastwards in continued transgression. A rudderless vessel. The water is a figure of a cross. There are two dark birds that move trance-like towards its origin, next to the train track's silver cacophonies. We hold hands next to the coming disaster. We threaten our lives and do not save one another. Or we push one another. We climb on top of one another's shoulders over a ladder that shouldn't move. Someone's watching now, or there's someone at the door. My ward is an animal, runs to see. My tormentor or my assassin behind the door, our eyes kiss through the peephole. In our shared telescope, one eye is bigger, the other smaller. And through the door, I can see the complete form in its tyranny. It's been the same since I was a child. Well, listen, I have something for you. If you just open the door just a little bit, if you just open the door, I can't or I won't. There is the taste of bloodlust in the interior. Well, I was only going out to collect papers. I have your mail for you, or I'm selling chocolate bars for St. Mark's or St. Mary's or St. Andrew's or St. Anthony's if you just open the door now. Choked propanic propulsion of sepulchre green smoke, arsenic-wide aisles and blizzards of thought and hallways of experience. Together we walk alongside screened predictions. Well, I went to the dockyards to call your name. I hadn't seen you there before, so I thought I'd be spared. The name echoed amid the hulls of the ships. The name reconstituted itself in the span of space, and I heard it in an unfamiliar voice as though someone else was looking for you. These strange rituals, they mocked me, for I was only looking to say aloud the name. In saying it aloud, you are reconstituted. There's something under there. It's a filmed disaster, isn't it? Or it's a corpse, isn't it? Far enough out here, the boundary waters of good and evil or love and fear become purple. How she'd be hanging over the docks and see the same thing. How preoccupied she was. How concerned she was with death. If only I can see past this day, if only I can live past it, that which is outside of certain modicums of control that we find ourselves in, dialogues towards analogy that mark public or private time, as though I operate at the disparate helm. And lambs, they run through screen doors in pursuit of a sudden feeling. A horse sails through the window upstairs next to a mystic's pedantic rage. Our scenes from childhood, they are uncontrolled agonies, thick and hairy gulfs dug out of sidewalls and fields that turn into swimming pools with underwater steps that instead become paler as they descend, until they themselves dissolve, until they themselves disappear. And then I wanted to recite a poem that was written 500 years ago. It goes like this. O western wind, when will thou blow? The small rain down can rain. O Christ, if my love were in my arms and I in my bed again. Thank you.
Oh, that's once again, that was Yates Cessna. The next poet is Carl Landauer.
So I love this series. So Jessica, thanks for the invitation, and Dan for hosting. So I am going to start with my memorial poem to David Meltzer. I don't know how many folks knew him, but I wrote this literally the 48th hour after his death in 2017. To David Meltzer. Under the cobblestones, Venice Beach. Everyone will say you are an angel, and you are, even with your Agit Smut books and your poems with thighs dripping, for that's part of the angelic smirk. As you walk in sneakers someone left in a room you don't remember, and hear the transistor radio in sunlight blaring songs you do remember, but prefer Monk's keyboard laid down, and for that you will wait till night so you can pick it up in moonlight alongside other shells and shards, over the roar of the traffic and the melancholic friar singing Ave Marias, unless you find the focaccia next door along with morning coffee. No one can escape that wild mind of yours, filled with every element of humanity, every morsel of life, every crumb from donut shops and bakeries long since shuttered, every thought of Debord and Heidegger, Scholem and Adorno, along with critics no longer writing about writers no longer read, but still full of meaning. And you remember every breath exhaled by friends from LA and SF, and instilled meaning from an infinite expanse of mind with electronic wires crossing paths, shorting out, making connections, relighting a whole city, but to return to that smirk, the smile, the love that emerged along with that grin as you lifted that martini glass to bearded mouth to take in more life and love and start over. Tanta Frida. So this is a McCarthy era poem. Was it in the Cleveland Garden apartment where my parents, 2 years away from New York, lived cocooned by the extended family of Spieglers and Danhausers, that Cleveland mishbucha they loved? I don't know how the news came. Notice of my father's failed security clearance, the requisite for continuing work at the NACA, that predecessor of NASA in Cleveland before space was added to aeronautics. However delivered, it was life-wrenching for the German Jewish refugee who had come to the US and loved his country. Did it involve his dissertation advisor, Wendell Ferry, the Harvard professor later hounded in both the House and the Senate? Was it a seemingly trivial call his brother asked him to make on a trip to California, possibly to somebody on somebody's list? My father moved to assemble a large portfolio, a brief for his loyalty and patriotism, starring his service in the Navy and all the indicia of an exemplary life. Fear became the atmosphere. Unable to discuss anything in their kitchen, Tanta Frida is maybe listening, became their code to continue at a whisper on the steps or in the street. Through my youth, my mother instructed me never to sign a petition, especially when you don't know its source, that 50s focus on front groups. But somehow the paranoia followed me even today as petitions pester inboxes and mostly threaten simply to proliferate. But my schooled anxiety shadows my thoughts and lives with all those new worries about surveillance of every step online. It is again a time when parents school their children with fears to haunt their futures. And now I'm going to read two poems, and these are the last two. I have a series of poems. Each is about a movie that is adapted from film. Adapted from literature. So I call these refracted ekphrases. And I have a book, the whole series, there's going to be a book that's coming out in 2027. So I'm going to read two tonight. The first is on Stanley Kramer's On the Beach of 1959 after Neville Shute's On the Beach of 1957. We're the last living people who ever see those places. Just as our politics cascade downward, news blaring of an administration ripping through laws, firing employees and trashing offices, rounding up people to be shorn and shackled, jeering at robed federal judges, upending international norms, and leaving allied cities defenseless to missiles and drones raining down on churches and homes. I confront On the Beach, both book and film, their tales of nuclear aftermath and despondency, aloneness, despair, allow no escape from text and screen, allow none of Shute's characters' vain futures. It'll go perfectly with the curtains in the nursery, none of their looking for fishing rods for sons long dead in Connecticut. Kramer limits these false futures, shows long naval yards and long skies in black and white, with no hint of blue despite days on the beach. Perhaps both book and film should have ended, with the sailors jumping ship in his hometown, seeing Ken Paglia's drugstore open, but in the middle of the day, he's left the neon lights on, or with the Coke bottle, caught against the window frame, creating the radio transmission from no one. And then, if I can go to find the next page, There we go. So the last poem is on Otto Preminger's Advice and Consent of 1962, adapted from Alan Drury's novel of 1959. A city of just arriveds and only visitings. This book of blackmail and backstabbing, this is a cruel town. I read in Washington with the government shut, streets empty except for the National Guard, a Camus cluster petting dogs in DuPont Circle, the few tourists speaking German and French and law students in coffee houses still talking about their futures, but no one walking the town sidewalks, and its drivers had no business, essentially a city with no sign of the swarms of government workers or Drury's reporters from various cities. Drury, the reporter, gives them small speaking parts. A stark scene to read a stark novel with too much caffeine. With all the meanness, the double-crossing, Drury senators still speak. The majority's leader's second call that morning is his minority counterpart. They joke about the trouble ahead, and everybody attends Dolly's parties. Official Washington loves nothing as much as drinking somebody else's liquor. But this is a story of a Secretary of State designee with a communist past and a senator blackmailed for a gay past. This just passed Joseph McCarthy's changing list of State Department Reds, also reliably gay. Preminger's senator takes a hurried flight to New York, shaken by his one-time lover in a gay bar and visibly sweating, takes the flight home to take his life. How, I wonder, did the 1962 film land in the senator's home state of Utah? So, that's it, thanks. Carl Landauer. Carl Landauer.
Carl Landauer. Next, we're going to close out the night with some music from Stephen Truskolaski, who is back there talking. I have to go get that.
I could play all kinds of music for you tonight, you know, and my blues stuff and usual stuff. But when I heard the first lady come up and talk about her quilting, I just felt this would be a really good song to play. And I haven't played this song forever, so she's helping me to bring up the lyrics on the cell phone, because otherwise I'd forget them. But this was my mother's favorite song for me to play when I was a little kid. So I just... So we're gonna do it, okay? Hold on. We figured that this is the back thing. Back through the years I go remembering, back to the seasons of my youth. I recall the box of rags someone gave us, how my mama put those rags to use. There were rags of many colors, every piece was small, and I didn't have a coat, and it was way down in the fall. Mama put those rags together, she showed every piece with love, and me and my coat of many colors that I was so proud of. My coat of many colors that my mama made for me, made from old rags, but I wore it so proudly. Didn't have much money, I was rich as I could be, in my coat of many colors that my mama made for me. As she showed a story from the Bible she had read about a coat of many colors just wore, and then she said, perhaps this coat will bring you good luck and happiness. Coat of many, wear it, as Mama blessed me with a kiss. My coat of many colors that my mama made for me, made from many rags, but I wore it so proudly. I didn't have much money, I was rich as I could be, in my coat of many colors that my mama made for me. So with patches on my breeches and holes in my shoes, my coat of many colors, I hurried off to school. Coat of many colors that my mama made for me. My coat of many colors that my mama made for me, made from only rags, but I wore it so proudly. I couldn't understand it, for I felt I was rich. If I could be in my coat of many colors my mama made for me, in my coat of many colors that my mama made for me. It's a little rough, but that's my mother's favorite song, and we did try to do it in the right key. Okay. You want to hear some blues now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now when I go down to Louisiana, looking for my baby, you know, talking about my baby, I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna find my baby, looking for my baby tonight. Well, she may be down in Thibodaux, Louisiana, rolling with those Cajuns, you know, talking about my baby, I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna find she ain't down in Loos, Louisiana. She might be up in Detroit, I know, hanging out with John Lee Hooker, singing the blues for him tonight. But I'm gonna find my baby, I'm looking for my baby tonight. Now she ain't in Detroit City, she's out in San Francisco, I know, hanging out with all the people at the saloon and stuff. Looking for my baby tonight. Down to Louisiana, I'm looking for my baby, you know. I'm talking about my baby, talking about my baby. I'm gonna find her, I'm gonna find my baby, looking for my baby tonight. When I go down to Louisiana, rolling with those Cajuns, you know. Well, I'm looking for my baby, I'm gonna find my baby, I wanna find her. I wanna find my baby, I'm looking for some fun tonight. She don't like her eggs all running. She thinks crossing her legs is funny. She looks down and knows that money. She gets it on like the Easter Bunny. But she's my baby, and I'm her honey. I'm never going to let her go. Ellie been late in a month of Sundays. Caught him once and he was sniffing my undies. He ain't too sharp, but he gets things done. He drinks his beer like it's oxygen. And she's my baby, I'm his honey. Never gonna let her go. In spite of ourselves, we'll end up sitting on a rainbow. Against all odds, honey, with a big door rise. We're going to spite, nose it right off of their faces. We're nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes. She thinks all the jokes are corny. Convict movies make her horny. She likes ketchup on her scrambled eggs. She swears like a sailor when she shaves her legs. But she takes a licking and keeps her on ticking. I'm never gonna let her go. And she says, well, he's got more balls than a big brass monkey. A whacked out weirdo and a love bug junkie. Sly as a fox, crazy as a loon. Payday comes and he's a howling at the moon, but he's my baby and I'm his honey, never gonna let him go. In spite of ourselves, we'll end up sitting on a rainbow. It's all ours, honey, we're the big door prize. One spite that knows is right off in our faces. Won't be nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes. Won't be nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes. Won't be nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes. In spite of ourselves, don't cry. Thank you.
And that was Stephen Truskolaski. Thank you for coming, everyone. Yes, I'm supposed to back up. Have a good evening. Yes, please come join us next month. Thank you to David for doing the sounds, as he always does, and thank you to Rory for helping out. And thank you to Dan Macchiarini, and thank you to all the poets.